Hello, everyone. Welcome to another amazing episode of Inspired Action, where we dive into the most pressing leadership challenges and hope to inspire you to take a more coach-centered and people-focused approach to leadership. I'm your host, Kyle Pertuis, and it's time to get started with our three amazing guests for today. Hey, everyone. Welcome to Inspired Action. I'm your host, Kyle Pertuis, and I'm here with two amazing guests today to answer this question. What hard truth about yourself have you faced that made you a better leader? Let me do a quick introduction to our guests, both Roxie and Sonja. Roxie Daneshvar, founder and principal of Torchbearer Coaching, Consulting and Training Solutions. She is an ACC-certified coach, leadership development consultant, and training specialist with more than a decade of experience helping individuals, teams, and organizations unlock potential and thrive. Sonja Crystal Williams. Sonja is a modern marketing leader, training teams, running a marketing agency, and leading growth at tech startups. She is also a trainer, a consultant, and partner and head of marketing at OneCredential. She's all about making online marketing make sense to anyone who wants to learn. Thank you both so much for joining the show. I cannot wait to dive into this question. Roxie, to begin with, what hard truth about yourself have you faced that made you a better leader?
Oh my goodness. All right. So, my hot take is that the habits that got me labeled a rock star and got me promoted weren't necessarily the same things that made me an effective leader. Working in public service, I'm sure anyone who has can relate. We're chronically under-resourced. So if you want the mission to succeed, you just have to roll your sleeves up and wear a lot of hats. And, um, I thought that that was leadership because I was rewarded for that behavior. But during my executive leadership development program at DOJ, they really drilled it into us, the habits that have helped you be successful in your early career up until this point. They might even be the things that hold you back as you're stepping into formal leadership roles. So I see nodding, so it seems like we've all gotten this advice. So just a couple of examples for me, like as a teammate, I took on the work that no one else wanted to do because one, I wanted to learn and I wanted to help, and saying yes to everything keeps the peace, right? So I was like, this is what leadership is, right? And the problem is that when I would get promoted and leave, even if I left a million SOPs, like a great digital breadcrumb trail, a lot of that knowledge still left with me. Like I thought I was being kind, but I was actually taking away learning opportunities from my colleagues. And I wasn't setting my programs up to run really well in my absence. So that was a good learning experience for me. You don't want to make systems and people dependent on you. We want to lift other people up and empower them to function well in our absence. And then I also saw a similar pattern in performance management when I ran that program. Supervisors would shield people from tough feedback, and it seems like a kindness. It seems like you're a good leader because you're not rocking the boat. But the problem with that is that it doesn't really help people. It stalls development, and then they would push the work onto the high performers to keep things moving, which is not sustainable because folks get burnt out. And things really shifted when I was blessed enough to work with some incredible folks in a psychologically safe environment. And I was able to start having really direct, kind conversations and teaching others the work and handing over ownership. And the outcome of that was a colleague who, probably my favorite colleague, who'd been overlooked for years. She finally had space to rise. And she told me how meaningful that trust was. And she was like, it was really uncomfortable stepping up and being visible, but thanks for making me do it. So that was really empowering. Well, it felt amazing to empower her. So that's one of the big things I think with leadership for me was shifting from I can do everything and make things easier for everybody else to designing work so opportunity and responsibility and growth are shared.
Yeah, I love that. And such great examples. And I love that the phraseology you use there, space to rise. I think
Mhm.
there's so much in that, right? Even as leaders, if we could just remember that phrase, just how do we create that for people, that space to rise, to create the opportunity, the shared knowledge, all of those things that you were just talking about. And it's interesting, Sonja, I want to hear what you have to say, but I want to throw this in because as something that Roxie just said, maybe remember an article I was reading literally this morning about how marathons are considering extending some of the time limits, right? Most marathons have a time limit, right? You have to finish in 6 hours, 4 hours, whatever it is, because more and more people are being encouraged to walk. Now, I'm a lifelong runner and I love the fact that anybody can be inspired to get out and do something like that, right? Whether it takes you 10 hours to do it or not, it's still 26 miles. But at the same time, the author was writing from the perspective of, you know what? some things are supposed to be hard. And if you hit that wall at 23 miles and you decide to walk because you're cramping beyond anything you could ever, describe, then that's expected. If we're extending the time to 8 hours so people can plan to walk, are we now making something that's supposed to be hard a little bit easier? And what is that teaching, right? And so I kind of sat with that. I was like, that's interesting. That applies to leadership, because there are those times where that space is so important for them to feel the friction, right? And to step out of that comfort zone and not walk, right? You've got to experience some of that pain to experience growth. So thank you, Roxie, for sharing that. That was a loaded answer to the first question. Sonja, I'm excited to hear what you would add. Tell us a little bit from your perspective what it was, right? I mean, what is a hard truth about you that you face that you believe made you a better leader?
Yeah, well, first, I appreciate both of your responses, Roxy, hearing your hot take, and then Kyle, your addition to it, especially given the marathon analogy, because my one of my hardcore passions is I teach a Pilates class. It's a hot Pilates class. It's very intense. And it's funny because one of my phrases that I say in that class is do the hard things. It's a very
Yeah.
intense class. It's in a hot room. People are ready to pass out, but I'm like, you're still standing in the end. You're alive. You didn't pass out. So do the hard things and challenge yourself. So that totally makes sense. For myself, the lesson learned and the big takeaway for me to becoming an effective leader has been the examination of just self responsibility, taking responsibility for my own actions. And my journey's been kind of interesting because I've worked a career. I've been in the government side. I went to the corporate side, and then for the past 15 plus years, I've been a small business owner. And so I can kind of relate to all of the things that you all are saying. And then on the side of running a business and hiring people, and in some cases having to fire people, it's been an interesting process. And some of that has reflected on me. So the taking responsibility, I kind of come to taking responsibility for my own stuff, and how I show up as a leader impacts the whole of the team that's working for me. I think about things that matter to me, like, am I setting this person up for success when we're starting a project together? Am I helping them get the tools they need? It's kind of going back to what you were saying, Roxy. And I've had that tendency too, because I like to record things on video and say, hey, here's how you do it. And I found myself, especially when I'm training teams and some of my clients, sometimes I'm training their people. I find myself having to step back and saying, the consultant side of me wants to show you how to do it and lay it out for you. And then to your point, like the leader side of me is saying, no, they're gonna have to figure this out. And you just need to give them some deadlines along the way and some milestones and benchmark to help set them up. So I do still ask myself, am I setting them up for success? But the way that I approach it now is a lot different than how it used to be. I also think about other things that are really important to me when I think about self responsibility, because I guess that awareness around starting to take more responsibility for my stuff really came out of my personal relationship with my husband and my desire to be a better partner. And being able to raise my hand and say, hey, I was wrong here. I'm owning up to this, and being able to talk about that. And for me, the lines have kind of blurred between something like that came from a personal part of my life to that translating to where it goes professionally into my career and into my work and into how I'm showing up on projects and working with clients. And remembering that part of this is the desire for growth in myself, and that desire for growth. And I once heard someone put this, they said, getting into all the hippy dippy stuff, right? So the the little stuff around like the mindset, the affirmations, like for me, even meditating, like all of that stuff, it matters because it impacts how I show up for other people. I can't lead or lead by example if I'm in a place just generally of, let's just say, anxiety. Something about this project is making me feel anxious, or something about it is off balance. Then I'm usually in a space where I need to take a time out from a personal standpoint for myself so I can show up better when I appear in the office space, on a Zoom call, in a meeting, whatever that is, I'm going to show up better for you if I took some time to me. So I think about all of those things. And for me, it's just kind of become that blurry line between personal and professional development. I think you can have the skills professionally to show up and say, hey, I'm a leader. I do this job well, and you can do it too. And I'm going to train you. But I think there's also more to it that comes beyond that with the behaviors and the characteristics that are going to support that. So that's been really the big takeaway for me.
I love it. I love the crossover. And I think maybe it's truly having the understanding that everyone is a leader, even if it's just in how we're leading ourselves. Right. Mm-hmm. Because that example you gave with your husband, it absolutely crosses over, and people that try to compartmentalize their work life from their home life, that just adds a whole nother layer of compounding stress. Right. And so I think the blurred lines, as you referred to, between personal and professional development really are human development. And if we see the value and we see potential in other people and understand how we can reach them and connect with them and engage them, then that's no different than doing it with our spouse, our friends, our community, our kids, all of those types of things. But can you remember back to when somebody asked, or, first observed some behaviors in you that may not quite serve you as well as you want them to as a leader? How did they acknowledge that and help you through it? Whoever wants to take it, go for it.
Do you want to go first, Sonja?
All right, I'll go for it. So I think two experience I had, I used to do pharma sales. And I had what I felt like was just one of the best managers ever. He had a lot of really great sayings. One of them was playing to your strengths. So he was very big in helping you learn how to play to your strengths. But, he did the field rides with us and would point out some of the areas where we could improve. And I remember I kind of prided myself up to that point on feeling like I was a little bit of an adaptable person because I was an Army kid growing up and grew up in a lot of different environments and had to deal with change. And I did find myself though at some points with where my territory was when I was doing sales, finding myself kind of being on this cusp of introverted yet extroverted, and I was in a sales role and I'm interacting with people, and my job was to go out and go into offices and talk to people. And my boss pointed out to me, Sonja, you got to work on and he said the word adaptability. And I'm thinking to myself, no, I'm adaptable. What are you talking about? You've got to learn how to turn the switch on and off when you go from one office to the next. And the truth of the matter is that was probably the start of having that it brought into my awareness. I will admit I didn't make the change right away. It really started to probably come full circle when, again, I left that career and started my own business and started to realize if I'm going to go out and network, that adaptability that I needed from the point that he was coming from, the way that he was kind of bringing in front of me, it was going to be required. So I started to work on it more by putting myself in some of more uncomfortable situations, what felt like what was uncomfortable for me, and pushing myself out of the comfort zone, and putting myself in environments and situations and conversations that I might have self-doubted. So that was, probably the point where that came to me.
I love that. And the word adaptability. So I'm curious because I kind of saw myself the same way. We moved a lot too. Not because of military. I think now at this point in my life, I'm starting to think my parents were gypsies, but I know they were really just unsettled in a lot of ways. But we moved a lot. And that was one of those things where you kind of just learn to adapt and you just kind of blend in. And as I've done a lot of personal growth and development, I often wondered if, because I was so comfortable doing that, if people that were more challenged by bringing someone in from the outside looked at it as, well, who do they think they are? And they're, not real talkative. You just do what you do to become comfortable. Right. And so I'm going to let Roxie take this, but my word that kind of fell out of the adaptability discovery for me was approachability. And I'll share a little bit more about that in a minute. Roxie, go ahead. I'd love to hear what you have to say.
All of that resonates so much. And it's interesting because you both mentioned moving around a lot. I moved around a lot as well. And so being kind, agreeable, easy to get along with, it just makes your life so much easier. It makes it easier to make friends, to build communities. So it's natural that conditioning, we carried that into our adult lives. So that's interesting.
Yeah.
I think my coach in my leadership program, she really helped me look at, and she asked me great questions. Of course, she's not pointing things out. She's asking questions. She's like, all right, let's look at things that have served you. How have they served you? And then let's look at what you can release, like to make space for the things that can serve you in your next chapter. So having a hard look at what has worked, what's not working, what do I need to let go of? That's advice I would give anyone who's moving and like leveling up into leadership journey. And it's just not advice that anyone really gives you, because if something has worked for you, they say keep doing it. But at the same time, you have to look at how it's worked for the people around you and how it's, it was the path of least resistance for leadership to give me everything because they knew I'd get it done. But at the same time, they accountability is such a form of respect and trust, and they weren't putting that into folks, who maybe needed a little bit more support or training to get things done. And so, yeah.
Yeah. It's interesting you say accountability, and Sonja was talking a while ago about personal responsibility. And I think there's some blurred lines there, right? Because a lot of times accountability, people think it's somebody else that's going to hold you accountability when it's really about personal responsibility, right? Is taking ownership of what it is you say you're going to do, complete, fulfill, whatever, right? Yeah, I love that. And I want to kind of connect that back to, Sonja also said something about the introvert and extrovert. And I joke a lot. So much of our work as trainers and consultants has to have us out with people and high energy and all of those things. And I love that. I love that kind of work. But man, there are times when I am at home and there are things to be done on the weekend, or we're going to go to an event or something with our church or whatever it is. I am perfectly fine just being very reserved and not speaking with anyone. And I don't mean it to be offensive, but then I think back to something, and it's interesting. It sounds like the people that you illustrated, at least in those examples, that may have helped you move past something to grow. One of my former partners was the one that told me I wasn't approachable. And I don't know that I ever believed it, but I took it at a truth at the time that they said that to me. And that stings when you are trying to grow a business, or you have, at that point we had a couple of hundred people in our business that I had been very, very in tune with from hiring and training and developing and promoting and all those kind of things. And then I think, wow, I'm unapproachable. What is it that they're not bringing to me that I need? And I think so much of that was at the tail end of my partnership. And I had already gone into being withdrawn. And I didn't realize that maybe that was having an impact on people who didn't know the whole story that was going on in my head. Right. And so I think those are things that are so important as leaders to elevate awareness around. And even if it's going back, as we just did, you guys kind of searching in the depths of your careers and trying to figure out, well, who was it? Who did I work with, or who inspired me? I mean, if we remember, like Sonja had a quote, right? He used to have these great quotes. And if we remember that from somebody, that's an impact, right? And I think those are the kind of things that we want to do as we set out and make an impact. Yeah. Awesome. Well, ladies, thank y'all so much. I know we could probably go on for another half hour. I think maybe one way I'll wrap this up is sometimes it's the truth that we avoid that is actually the truth that grows us, right? And I think it's sometimes just having to look in the mirror, or having someone that's willing to hold that mirror up for us. So thank you again for helping this be another great episode of Inspired Action. Everyone out there, please watch us every Thursday at noon Central on our LinkedIn channel, and anytime right here on YouTube at MindFit Coaching. Thank you. We'll see you soon. That's a wrap for another edition of Inspired Action, the Leadership Forecast. We're so grateful for our guests today and the impact they're making with the work they do. Be sure to check out our YouTube channel to watch the longer version of this episode, and be sure to like, comment, connect with, and follow me and each of our guests. You'll find all of our links in the caption of this video. Thanks for watching, and be sure to tune in every Thursday at noon Central, 1 p.m. Eastern for new episodes.